Hi, everyone. Okay, so we've now talked about how the ATP cycle is necessary. You need charging up ATP so you can do things, and then you need to take the P off the ADP, and that releases the energy so you can do stuff, and then you have to put them together. So you break down glucose. You have two ways you can do that. You can do it anaerobically, just gets a little bit of energy, but it doesn't need oxygen. Aerobically requires oxygen, but gets a lot more out of it. We've talked about fermentation, that is anaerobic respiration, and how yeast and bacteria make alcohol and lactic acid by that process, and how even animals, and including humans, switch over to anaerobic respiration to make lactic acid and ATP in desperate circumstances where they can't get enough oxygen, and it hurts like heck, and it's called muscle fatigue when that happens, when you do anaerobic respiration. And that's where we are. Now we're going to go on to the most important part, which is we're going to talk about aerobic respiration, right? This is the one that breaks down the sugar completely, gets tons of energy out. It's done by all organisms. It's done by plants and animals and fungi and protists like amoebas. Everything other than yeast and bacteria do this normally. And it's breaking down glucose. So we're going to start with glucose. Remember, this is all about breaking the bonds in the glucose to get the energy out to make ATP, to put the P's and ADPs together. And so we're going to start with glucose. But of course, what's the other thing that we need? It's aerobic. So what do we need? We need oxygen. So we're going to have both glucose to break it down, but we're also going to need oxygen present. So you're going to have a mechanism like lungs to breathe, to bring in oxygen into the body. You're going to need a circulatory system to get those to the cells. So there's a big process of getting the oxygen to the cells. And of course, you have a digestive system, so you can eat, so you can get the sugar into your intestines, and then you bring that to the cells. So you're busy bringing all sorts of stuff to your cells. You need both the glucose and the oxygen to get there. And once it's there, if you have mitochondria, which you do in your cells, you can do aerobic respiration. And instead of making alcohol or lactic acid, you are going to break this down so fully that you're going to have these tiny little molecules that have very few bonds and therefore very little energy left, because all the energy is going to be transferred to ATP. Well, what are those? That would include water. Yes, you make water in your cells. And carbon dioxide. This is why you exhale carbon dioxide, because when you tear apart glucose, you take some of the C's and O's out of that sugar and you make carbon dioxide. When you exhale, that carbon dioxide that's coming out, those C's and O's entered your body when you ate sugar, and you tore it all apart and you brought it out of your cells into your bloodstream and back to your lungs. And so you're exhaling the atoms you ate. Lots of people think you're breathing in oxygen, somehow it's magically in your lungs turning into carbon dioxide, and you're exhaling this magically made carbon dioxide. But you can't turn O2 into CO2. Doesn't happen. There's no C's. This is a sugar broken down in your cells, get the energy, and then that CO2 is brought back to your lungs and you exhale it. So the glucose and the oxygen goes in, and you're going to get out water and carbon dioxide. And of course, what's the other thing that you're going to get? Why do you bother doing all of this? So that you can get ATP. And unlike anaerobic respiration, where you just get 2 ATP, you're going to get 36. That means when you break down your glucose, you're going to do this cycle 36 times. You're going to be able to take 36 ADPs and 36 Ps and shove them together and get 36 ATPs. That's a lot of energy. And when you're done, your glucose is going to have very little left in it. It's only going to be carbon dioxide and water. That's all that's going to be left. And you're going to pee out the water or sweat out the water or exhale the water. You're going to exhale the carbon dioxide. And that's all that's left of your sugar, because you're so good at getting the energy out of it that you can break it up completely and you can make 36 ATP. So just a quick overview. You're going to start with glucose and oxygen, and those have to be brought to your cells. And you are going to do a series of chemical reactions that are all very detailed. We don't have to get into, but you're going to make water and carbon dioxide in your cells that'll have to be transported out and gotten rid of. And in the process, you'll be able to make 36 ATP. Who does this? Everybody except yeast and bacteria. Animals, plants, fungi, protists. And think about this for a moment. I just said, what do you need to do aerobic respiration? You need sugar and oxygen. That means all of these organisms need oxygen. Animals, we know that. We breathe oxygen, right? We know they need oxygen. Mushrooms, okay, maybe that's like, you can accept that, right? They need oxygen. Protists, I haven't thought about them that much, so probably, yeah, sure. But I want you to think about plants. Is that what they've taught you all these years, that plants need oxygen? No. They've been teaching you that plants need carbon dioxide and make oxygen, right? That's true, because plants do photosynthesis and they need carbon dioxide when they do photosynthesis, and they make oxygen when they do photosynthesis, and they make their sugar. That's not what we're talking about right now. Plants, once they make their sugar, have to do aerobic respiration too. And so they do this exact reaction. Plants will take the sugar they made by photosynthesis and the oxygen they made by photosynthesis and produce carbon dioxide. And when it's nighttime and they can't do photosynthesis, they actually release carbon dioxide into the environment, just like animals, because they are also doing this reaction. They have mitochondria and they do this. They break down sugar and they need oxygen to do it. And they make carbon dioxide and water so they can get lots of ATPs. The only difference is they made their sugar and they made their oxygen. They could also take it out of the atmosphere, but a lot of it they've made when they did photosynthesis. They're self-sufficient, but they do need to do this reaction just like we do. It includes plants, fungi, animals, protists. We all do aerobic respiration unless we're desperate and we can't get enough oxygen, in which case we go back to the anaerobic. Okay, it starts in the cytoplasm and it finishes in the mitochondria. So we are talking about respiration beginning in the cytoplasm and ending in the mitochondria, whether you're an animal or a plant. Plants have mitochondria because they do this. They use oxygen and make carbon dioxide by aerobic respiration in their mitochondria. If they are taking in carbon dioxide and releasing oxygen, that's because they're using their chloroplasts and doing photosynthesis. Separate reaction we'll talk about in a bit. Not today. Okay? When they do aerobic respiration, they very much use oxygen and produce carbon dioxide just like we do. And that is aerobic respiration.